Just as I was recording this, I thought reconnaissance is so important in our world of hacking that it probably deserves more credit than it's due. So I thought we're going to be interesting to actually write up and do another presentation or a quick inside the mind of a hacker based on purely on reconnaissance. And we're going to get a deeper look into recon. And then we're going to use recon as we would in the real world. Okay, so just a little bit more information on reconnaissance. It is so important that we get reconnaissance right. We're going to talk about more about passive, and then later in another series, we're going to talk more about the active reconnaissance as well. So let's begin with our passive recon. This is version 2 that I thought was just super important. There's just so many things out there on reconnaissance that it's just so granular. We just have to have another video dedicated just reconnaissance, and it's a bonus video just for you right now. So you and I are both going to go through reconnaissance version 2 right now. Okay, so let's just have a quick look at around passive reconnaissance and what that looks like. Here in Australia, there are a lot of rules and regulations, of course, and then there are so many public records that are available. There are companies out there that are developing applications and websites and all these cool new products and tech stuff that then they have to develop, I guess, what we call patterns or any sort of copyright material. Guys, that's a really passive reconnaissance right there. If we head over to the ipaustralia.gov website, which we're going to go through right now as well, we can search through a bunch of cool stuff. We can look at patterns, we can look at information, we can look at names, usernames, details that it just gets us a sort of a high level view of some company or whatever company that we want to target. Let's just say, for example, we're targeting a manufacturing company and they're in patterns of they're developing a new application or a new sort of manufacturing tool for whatever reason, for whatever they're creating, they're going to have this specific pattern that's directly correlated with that sort of manufacturing company. We then can take that pattern and then we can have that information for ourselves, and then we can understand what that pattern is there to do, what this company intends to do with this sort of tech stuff, etc., etc., etc. So it's just more information for us, and the more information we have, guys, the more better it is for us to exploit that particular vulnerability. So we're going to take a look at the IP Australia website. We're going to do some searches. Again, ASIC is another one, or any other registrars out there. So the asx.com.au website, we can get information such as shareholder information, salary grades. We can get a look at the people that are at those specific companies, their roles, director reports, any sort of financial stuff that we can get access to. We want to get hold of. We want to know what the business sort of does, how it makes money, just sort of basic understanding. We don't want to get too much involved in the, I guess, the business side of things, but it's great to know of how the business generates money. If we intend to do something malicious or we want to sort of do something that's in terms of, financial disaster or whatever the case may be. So we're going to have a look at other registrars. We're going to look at the ASIC database as well, where every company that's registered has to go through ASIC as well here in Australia. Then we're going to look at social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and as we discussed previously, guys, other forums as well. We can get a bunch of information through forums. And then my favorite as well, who is as well. So let's just take a look at them now. I'm just going to change my page here, guys, and go back to here. So this is the Australian trademark, I guess, IP Australia. So in here, we can look at patterns, we can look at IP, we can look at copyright, we can look at anything, I guess, a company sort of wants to protect. So, the more stuff that they want to protect, the better it is for us. I just did a quick search before on, Cisco. And, I had no reason to have a look, but, I came across this. Look, there's a guy's name there. We've got an email address. We've got some sort of batch ID number. Probably no value yet, but we want to see what the value of this could be. We don't know what they're trying to do yet. It's almost a 120-page document. So in this document, I don't want to sort of go through it, but there's probably some really critical information. Look, declaration of actually who's the CFO of the company. I can target that CFO particularly, etc. So there's just some information here, guys, that look, that's Twitter staff, Twitter handles, Tracy, she's the legal practitioner, etc. So I'm pretty sure there's probably something of value within this document that you know, in the wrong hands can be disastrous, and you know, it's publicly available. Okay, so that's a bad thing. Another company I just did a research on of patents. So there might be a particular patent within the Australian government that they're developing, or something in here that might be seen valuable. Here's another one. So here's another guy's name, Phillips Fitzpatrick. I can search him up, see what he does, get an understanding of what his business does. Obviously, we don't want to do that. We want to gain a target. So we want to have our eyes on a specific target, whether if we're doing a penetration test for a company, for example, we want to obviously research that company. You know, we don't want to just go in here and just start do the spray and run sort of thing. We just want to have a targeted approach within a company. So these are all the patterns that could be developed. Could be some critical information that we can find, and then we can sort of use that up as well. ABN lookup is another great tool. If we can have an ABN of a company, you know, if we look at Coles, I don't know if it will let me do that, but it's taking a long time to load. It doesn't look like it's going to come up, but it looks like it's got all these names and stuff. So, you know, we can get basic details. So if we look at this guy right here, we've got his details. So we know his ABN details. We can know where he's registered. He's not registered for GST. And obviously there's some more records that we can get, such as, I guess, his address and all that sort of stuff as well, etc. So it's just basic information. The ASIC website is one of the other cool ones. We can, obviously, every company that's listed here in Australia will go through ASIC. It's the Securities and Investment Commission. So anything that's due with, you know, the company registrations, etc., will go through ASIC. So we can do a straight search through ASIC. We can get any financial records, names, email addresses, usernames, and there's some stuff that we might find that's, you know, they might be developing a particular new appliance or something, or a new tech gadget, and it'll be in here. So we can obviously get our hands on it. The ASX is fantastic. You know, if I look up a huge company like Telstra, excuse me, we can get more information on, I guess, the ASX type of information. So it's usually a board report that will have obviously shareholder information, how the company generates money, the profit and loss. It's more of a financial statements, but there's always cool information in there that we can get. So we can obviously identify the targets, such as the CEO, the CFO, other board of directors, etc. So we know, and then we can then piece the puzzles together and say, great, we know all these guys work at this company, and that's the C-suite. Then we can start doing more snooping around and trying to bring that sort of triangle down that we spoke about before. Another huge important website is APNIC. It's the APAC for IP registration. So if we have obviously a name that we want to go after, or an IP address, for example, we can use WHOIS as well to do the registrants of the DNS or domain system as well. We can check that out. And you can just find some really cool things through apnic.net as well, or acma.gov. You know, IP addresses here in Australia. You've got IP identifying numbers, mobile networks as well, etc. So here we can put in specific keywords or specific IP addresses or phone numbers or that sort of stuff, and then that can correlate some information about a particular company as well. Another cool thing I want to show you guys is domain tools, and you know, we can do a specific DNS lookup or a WHOIS record and find out more information about a specific company, such as, you know, if we use a particular WHOIS lookup, we can get an IP, an understanding of what appliances the company could be using, what IP addresses, what are the domain names, what are the DNS servers, and that sort of stuff, which gets pretty cool. And the next tool that I want to show you guys is obviously social media. That's pretty easy and basic. Obviously LinkedIn, most people are on LinkedIn. But for the people that aren't, we can always get more information on them. We can search them up through Facebook, or look at the company profiles through other social media channels. Another one is interviews as well, right? So I probably didn't write that down, but interviews, you know, I can go for an interview at a particular company. I can act as you know, a network security engineer or a network architect, for example, and I can say, hey, you know, what sort of appliances are you running? And a great interviewer will never reveal anything about their information security environment, nor the production environment. They could use other vendors. They can use maybe a vendor name, but they should never use a specific or a specificality of vendors. They shouldn't be able to tell you, look, we're using Cisco routers version 15.1 or 15.2, whatever it is. It was last updated, 3 months ago, that sort of stuff. So interviews is another great way to extract some information. And then that's passive reconnaissance as well. So if I'm going for an interview, I can probably talk to the CIO, the tech leader, and say, hey, what's your architecture look like? How many Active Directory servers do you have? What's the, what's a domain name called, whether it's blah, 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 .corp.com.au, whatever the name system is. What's your IP address? Let's draw out a network and see how we can, if there's a problem here and whatever. And I'm trying to try and milk them for more information. If I can get the internal IP addresses and external IP address, are they using TCP? Are they using any sort of remote such as SSH or FTP sort of services or whatever? Anything that I can get my hands on and get access to, I want to do. So that's something that we can do. Have a think about interviews as well. Interviews is often underlooked, so just be very vigilant if you are conducting interviews, as well as if you're in an interview, give it a try and see if someone's going to give you information, or they're going to be very methodological and not give you any details at all. Obviously, Facebook and Twitter, guys, big no-nos. People can post information, the locations, where they are. The biggest thing that I've seen as well is when you're doing reconnaissance, a lot of people that are on LinkedIn will have a Facebook account, and they have their buddies on Facebook as well. So I was doing a penetration test not long ago where there was a specific user that we were going after, and he was part of the security architecture team of this large company. Turns out that he had a Facebook profile, and he was very active on Facebook as well as LinkedIn. He'd share a lot of he'd share a lot of articles. He'd write a lot of articles, and he wrote a specific article around a particular new architecture they were implementing at this specific company. Now, the problem with this is that he mentioned exactly what patch level they're currently running and what problems they're having, and that to me was literally gold, because he's just saved me a whole lot of time where he's just told me what the problem was and what level of operating systems are running and their patch levels. And all I had to do was go look at cvedetails.com and, find a particular vulnerability within this, appliance or device I was using, and I can find an exploit that will compromise that system. So it's not very difficult to do, just basic reconnaissance that'll save you a whole lot of time. And some things like this can often be underlooked as well. So forums, guys, we spoke about forums before. Hugely valuable information you can get from forums. If people are posting information such as running configuration files, we're going to take those files. Now, the problem with passive reconnaissance, you're getting basic records from everything. And all we need to do is then basically put the pieces together, right? So we have to puzzle it. It's like a puzzle. There's a bit of pieces here, bit of pieces there, bit of here, bit there. And then we just have to bring it all together and basically glue it together. So that's what we have to do. Then we have to draw out our own networks and what it looks like. And I'm going to show you some cool stuff in the next slide as well. So now let's get started with a real world sort of passive approach, with reconnaissance. So Netcraft is I'd say it's probably one of the coolest tools out there. Netcraft just does a lot of research for me. And it sort of gets really granular around what sort of operating system they're using, which vendor they're using. I'm going to show you that as well here now as well. So let's just take a look at that. So if we go over to netcraft.com, and I was just having a quick look before, but I'll walk you through with you guys right now as well. So there's a specific company that you want to target. Now, obviously, it's passive reconnaissance. We're not doing anything wrong. It's publicly listed information, right? So in terms of, there's a little search function here where it says, what's that site running? And I'm just going to put in there the website that I want to target. So, for example, this company is called Bunnings.com.au. And I'm going to do a quick search. Now, Bunnings here in Australia is a sort of a hardware house. They'll have like shovels, plants, manure stuff, and all that sort of stuff, all sort of home appliances for your home and that sort of stuff. So results for Bunnings. So it comes up with 4 results, and these are all the websites that are basically associated with Bunnings.com. Whether they have a shop platform or another intranet page or whatever the case may be. So let's take a look at the first one and look at the site report. And then it just basically pulls that information from what's available. So it'll pull up all the DNS records, it'll pull out the hosts, and you know, it just does everything for you. It's a really nifty tool. So obviously the date it was first seen, it was 1996. It's a hardware store, and then it just goes on and tells you more information about you know, the company itself. And some really cool things in here. Sometimes we can get names of people that might register with that specific domain name. You know, we want names. We don't want specific generic email addresses where reports just go to, because it's just, you know, it's just a false positive report. But we want names of people, which sometimes it's in here as well. So if we have a look at the hosting history, we can actually identify what systems are running. Look at this. So we've got all of these IP addresses. We can see the operating systems. It's Linux. They're using Cloudflare. Cloudflare is a fantastic product as well. Yeah, and then we can get really granular. Like we can just see more information about it. So, you know, if you just scroll down, you can see that they're using Cloudflare, Google Analytics, SSL. They're using JavaScript, so we can craft specific exploits just for JavaScript. And the list sort of goes on as well. So very basic stuff. It's all here. We can even then go a bit more granular. Sometimes it tells you even more information about a specific host. So if we click on the first host, it'll tell us hopefully what operating system or hardware device they're using, which looks like it's not doing it right now, but and that's a bit of that. So if we type another URL, let's have a look at Coles. Coles is another large shopping company here in Australia. You do your grocery shopping, you know, your chips, your milk, your bread. So they're a large company. They should have great appliances in place. They shouldn't be using old Windows servers or, you know, all that sort of stuff. But in most cases they could be, and that's basically an exploit in itself. So let's just have a quick look. So here we go. Look at that, guys. So that's some information there. We've got the IP address of the information. Look at that, operating system, Windows 2000. Guys, if we go to cvedetails.com, right now we'll do that. And CVE Details is just really great. It just tells you all these vulnerabilities that are out there. We can then get really granular on what specific vendor or product they're using. And then we can actually look at those specific vulnerabilities and how much of a criticality that could be on that specific appliance itself. So, you know, look, so they're using Microsoft IIS, 2015, 2013, 2011. So they're using quite old legacy stuff. So, and look at the last one, guys. So Windows 98. So, so there we go. So there's more information on it, etc. So you can go through this. You can look. They're using jQuery. They're using JavaScript, SSL stuff. So now we know what sort of technology they could be using, and then we can create our own exploits, I guess, from there as well. You know, if they're using a Windows server, we can go to Windows, have a look at their operating systems, find out what the faults are, you know, etc. Or we can go to the vendor website itself, look at that specific appliance, get more information on that appliance, and then build an exploit POC from there too. Okay, so I'm just going to go back now. Next step is what we call grind documents or document grinding, job search. So obviously, if you can go to job websites, you can. Some people or some customers will put in what the architecture is. You know, they might say, look, we're hosting information on AWS or Google or Microsoft Azure. You know, these are our domain names, these are our DNS records, these are our IP addresses. I haven't seen any company post IP addresses yet, but I have seen them post a lot of information about their production environment, such as patch levels, operating systems and stuff. So from there, we can just get really granular. Interviews we spoke about before. And then we can look at the source page reviews, so the source page of the website. So there isn't much value in the source page. However, there could be something valuable, such as, you know, an administration password or a password or another sort of file that we can sort of see by looking at the actual view of the source code as well. Then we talk about site mirroring, HTT track, archive.org, and wget. Wget, I would say, is probably my favorite. If you are running Kali Linux, in which another video will deploy and run an actual Kali Linux box that we're going to walk through together. All you need to do is just run in wget and then the name of the company. And then it just pulls out a report on literally what the company is hosting and what their production systems are to a really granular level. It doesn't go through, I guess, that much of depth. However, it gives you enough information to know what operating system, what level of patch it's at, etc. So it's a really nifty tool. It doesn't take a lot of resources to use. It'll literally take maybe a couple of minutes, if that, to spit out a report. So it's really cool. HTT Track is also another great tool. I haven't had much luck with archive.org. However, I've used it a couple of times. It is a cool tool, but I would still recommend HTT Track and wget over archive.org. Some more resources, guys. We can also always do a trace route and see what hops the network this specific host goes through. So we can get different IP addresses, whether it's going through a service provider or it's going through another sort of system or a network. We can obtain those IP addresses, and that's valuable information. We can get the DNS records, such as who is, and look up their information on who is, get more of their DNSs. Obviously doing an NS lookup for basic stuff. We want to know the IP address, the domain name. Zone transfer is super critical in an environment. We can actually take their entire DNS record and have that database to ourselves. It literally doesn't take a lot of an exploit to do. It's pretty simple to do. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but in terms of zone transfer, I'll give this literally a 5 out of 5. It is super cool to do. And zone transferring their entire DNS records is one way to spoof DNS, so we can reroute their information to another server. So let's just say we want to go to google.com, or anyone in the company goes to google.com, we can reroute them to facebook.com. Or if they've got a production or a specific VPN website that they have to go to, like let's just say that the company's got a myvpn.com.au, and then all employees have to go to myvpn.com.au to log in and establish a full mutual authentication between the internal production environment. We can reroute that to basically a version 2 of myVPN. And let's just say this could be encrypted with HTTPS, which provides mutual authentication. And we'll talk about more authentication and HTTPS later on in these series, but let's just go through a little bit of a high level overview. We can reroute that information to another myvpn.com.au, but it cannot be encrypted. It can be plain text using, I guess, HTTP. And then we can intercept the traffic, and then we've got their usernames and passwords too. So another cool tool is robots.txt. Now, for many organizations out there, for many developers who basically code and develop websites, they have a specific, they don't want any records to be spotted by the search engines, right? And what that means is normally when you post a web page on Google, for example, it will spot the content, it will go through each layer of the content. The specific content that maybe a web developer, a web dev, or a security engineer doesn't want the Google search engines to actually spot, so they'll try and hide these resources. And there's been some cool resources that you're able to find just by doing in a robots.txt right after the actual website. And I'll show you what it's like just now. So if we go to bunnings.com.au, for example, or any website that you want to, want to see what resources aren't being populated by, the web pages via the Google search engines, and here are some resources. So sometimes in here, a developer might put something useful in here, such as password or administrator or, executive level or financial reports or HR details or records or whatever the case might be. Sometimes they could be bogus and, there's no value in them, and then they're just going to lead us down this hole that doesn't lead to anywhere. But, this is part of reconnaissance. So we want to know what's in login. We want to know what's in user. We want to know what's in checkout. What's in Expo, what's in search, etc. So there's more ways to go around this. This is just something basic. So if you just type in the name, obviously Coles had nothing, which is quite odd. But other times, you've seen some really cool things in here, such as passwords or user requests or usernames as well. So later on, we'll get a bit more technical on how to, find these vulnerabilities and exploit them. Right now, we'll just keep it as a high level and keep it pretty basic. Guys, that's pretty much it. This nugget, I think this little sort of piece of video series now was just a bit more value to give to you. I thought that this deserved a real big piece in itself because you're so valuable to do reconnaissance and reconnaissance in a practical sense. Guys, give it a try. You know, load up some information on some websites, see what information you can get. I pre-recorded this series and I sent it to a particular couple of students that we're working with, and they then send me all these reports on all these firewalls and F5 load balancers and all this cool stuff. They're like, oh, look what we learned. There's an exploit with this thing, and can we craft an exploit? I was like, no, you can't. You don't have permission to do that. But great work on doing passive reconnaissance because that's what it is. And they pulled it all together and they said to me, look, we've got a network diagram. We know how the network connects to the internet. We know how it comes in. Here are the IP addresses. We found some information based on these hosts, and I was quite scared. I was like, wow, these kids are actually doing it, and this is the real world. So guys, go out there and have some fun. Don't get in trouble because obviously this is passive reconnaissance. There's no sort of thing that's preventing you from doing it. It's publicly accessible, but just be very careful that when you start doing active reconnaissance and you start doing scanning on networks, then you will be in trouble and you can get caught. However, if you're just getting normal information gathering and you just want to, do some reconnaissance on a particular company, then, you're open to that. That's okay, I guess. But, just be very mindful that, if you start getting into muddy waters, things can go pear-shaped. So do this in a lab environment. I don't condone anyone into going out there in the real world and doing this. This is for education purposes. And I just want to train you guys on the real world of how to properly do reconnaissance out there in the real world. Okay. So I hope this video has been a bit informative. Guys, if you have any more questions, keep sending them through. I love all the responses that you've been given and you're giving me huge feedback. Thank you. Guys, I'll see you guys in the next video. Be ready. We're going to go through some really cool things. I'll see you guys soon.